Good evening, everyone. Adams van Zyl here, All Conscious Caracal. And tonight, we're again shining a light on some happenings down south, specifically the southern tip of Africa. Some very interesting pioneering stuff happening over here. And I've already seen a lot of international attention regarding some of the solutions that are being developed right here, right now. And tonight, I'm talking to one of those pioneers, Paul van Deventer. He is the managing director at Soltech, and he's going to be telling us about his institution that he's at the helm of, and also some of the themes and philosophies behind it. So you will remember from a previous episode, I talked to Dr. Dirk Herman about Soltech, and tonight we're going to dig a bit deeper into specifically what happens within the walls of the institution itself. So we're very much welcome on the show, Paul.
Thank you, Ernest. Nice to speak to you, and good evening to your listeners.
So let's start with the simple question. I think the contextual question, that is, what is Soltech?
Yeah, and Soltech is a technical vocational private training college. And we pride ourselves, we make young people employable by training them in the critical and scarce skills. That's a mouthful, but we need them to be successful in South Africa. We are strongly guided by our Christian values. And what makes us unique in South Africa is the fact that our training language is Afrikaans. And we pride ourselves also with an extremely high standard of training, which is part of our success for the past 13 years already. Currently, Soltech focus on trades, artisan training. However, we're on the process of developing non-technical training in other fields and qualifications. But currently and for the past 13 years, we are well known for 8 different trades, like electrician, millwright, diesel mechanic, tractor mechanic, fitter and turner, auto electrician, welding, and tool and die maker. So that's mostly your critical and scarce skills in South Africa, and what South Africa needs so much. So that's in a nutshell. We are a vocational college that makes young people employable.
And you said Soltech has existed for many years now, but specifically this year, what has made it make the news? Why is Soltech suddenly this big story again? What was the accomplishment this year, maybe for those that are not in the know?
Yes. So after 13 or 12 years of existence, we are finally moved into a world-class 300 million rand campus. We started building quite a few in October 2019, and we finished at December 2020. We finished the college within budget, in a time span where COVID also set us back a bit. So what was big in the news the past few weeks is that we started on the 1st of February with our brand new campus, which is world class, and must say people enjoy it. It gives hope, and that was quite newsworthy for the past few weeks.
And now that you've covered the what of Soltech, I think we need to get into the why. Why specifically is it so important to build a trade/technical college in a time where some people worry that maybe trades are losing their importance or losing their relevancy? Why specifically was this the main focus, or such a big accomplishment and something that so much money was put into?
Yeah, and it's, if you look at the current state of artisan training in South Africa, and the current state of artisans in the country, then it shows that we made the right decision 13 years ago to start with Soltech. So the question is then why? Why would you start 13 years ago with a technical training college, private as well, with no funding? Now we need to go back a little bit. Flip Base, which is the chairperson of the Solidarity movement currently, and at that stage he was the leader of the Solidarity Trade Union, together with Dr. Dirk Herman, who was also a previous guest of yours. He's currently the leader of Solidarity Trade Union. They were the visionaries that built the Solidarity movement to what we have today. Now, back in 1997 already, Flip already had this vision that we need to build a private technical college, as well as a university, which we also busy with and which we've done already. Now, he already saw then, and he predicted that we will have a weak state. We sit with a government that can struggle, but they cannot rule effectively. And, so if you look at a few reasons why Soltech or technical college was established, that's the very first reason. We have a weak institutions of technical training in South Africa. Now, we saw what happened to state colleges, and even your big private or industry training stopped completely. And we can still remember the excellent training that state enterprises like Sasol and Eskom produced. That training stopped completely, almost completely. They hardly train for themselves these days. Now, artisan training is expensive, and it's not a high profit business. And unfortunately, when companies have to cut cost, training is usually the first thing to be cut. So your first reason is we sit with weak institutions in South Africa for technical training. The second reason is the power of mother tongue training. Now, as we sit here today, we have about 50 public TVET colleges with about 364 campuses and 284 private colleges registered in South Africa. Now, obviously, not all of them is technical training colleges, but not one single one of them is giving artisan training in Afrikaans. Now, it's a well-known fact around the world that there's a huge power that lies in mother tongue education. At any person that can learn the best if they are taught in their mother tongue, especially with difficult concepts that one has to master. This past Sunday, 2 days back, the 21st of February, was International Mother Tongue Day. And we see that teaching the foundational skills, which is the early literacy and numeracy, and the critical thinking that's so necessary in a language that child speaks and understands, is one of the most effective ways to reduce school failure and dropout. And even more important, those foundational skills is significantly increase better learning at a later stage. So the second reason why create a place like this is to give Afrikaans learners an opportunity to study in their own language. And some people sometimes want to say that we are excluding people due to the language or to Afrikaans. And the actual fact is we're not. We're actually including. We are inclusive. And we give an opportunity to Afrikaans-speaking people where they are excluded everywhere else in the country. The third point and reason is that there's a very big focus in South Africa on racial quotas in the workplace. But also, not only in the workplace, also with the appointing of apprentices. So there's simply not opportunity for everyone to be appointed and trained through companies. You must remember, artisan training, you need a very big, the employer plays a very big part in artisan training, where at the end of the training, they give the practical workplace experience to a student. And traditionally how it works is a company will employ a person first, an apprentice first, and then they will send them on training. And because that's not happening anymore, there's no opportunity for young people to become artisans. So we had to make a plan to get around that. And then lastly, we took self-responsibility for our own future in this country. Now, that is the fundamentals about the solidarity movement. We're taking our own future into our own hands, and we are not dependent on the state, which we are failing. So when you take your future in your own hands, it means you are free. It means you can make your own decisions, and you can take control of your future. And we say we built a campus like Soltech here because we are here to stay. That's a very strong and a powerful message that we actually send out there. And that's the message that we want to give people in South Africa and the world, and say, by building a 300 million rand campus, we give the message of hope, and we give a message of we are here to build, and we would like everyone to build with us.
Well, and I think the natural question that would lead from that is the fact that when you look around you in South Africa and across communities, there seems to have there seems to have been created a stigma around studying trades or practicing trades. Across communities, there seems to be this prevailing idea that you have to go study for a degree. That's the only way you can ever find a job. That's the only way you will ever become employable in the modern economy. Studying and practicing trades is something of the past. It's something that's being slowly phased out. That's some of the sentiments that you would hear when you talk to the average Afrikaner or South African on the streets, asking them questions surrounding studying trades. Now, you as someone that is very directly involved in the studying of trades and helping young South Africans fulfill that dream and get those qualifications and eventually build a future with them, why do you think it is important to fight this stigma and to, for a lack of a better word, to redeem the status of the trades and to pretty much bring back the pride there was in studying a trade and practicing a trade and the satisfaction that people used to get on a very large scale from it?
Yeah, and I'm very glad you mentioned that. We are very passionate about the status of an artisan. Now, I already mentioned that some of the world-class training institutions that used to be in South Africa, they just stopped training. A lot of them were state-owned enterprises. They hardly train for themselves anymore, and so they only conduct training in English, solely on English. But if you look at South Africa at the moment, what's going on in South Africa is that we have an unemployment figure of about 30%, 30.8%. But if you look broader to the definition, it's more like 43% unemployment in South Africa, which means that almost half of the adults in South Africa that can work does not work. If there's one thing that's a key solution to unemployment, it's better skills and training. So that is how we're going to fight unemployment in South Africa. Now, the problem actually starts much earlier. If you look at half of the unemployed people currently does not have a matric certificate. So your problem is not starting with post-matric qualifications or training. It actually starts in school already. And if you look at also again the unemployed people, that 1 out of 10 people that is currently unemployed have a tertiary qualification. So there's a direct correlation between better education and improvement of unemployment. Now, Gallup is a worldwide international research company, and they did some research in 2012 about what people see as the most important. Now, the biggest need for people that was shown was a good job. And a good job, however, only comes with proper education and training. Now, with all the contributing factors that I mentioned to you, South Africa is in a crisis with artisans. We know that. Can you still hear me, Ernest?
Yes, I'm just going through some photographs that of your institution while you are answering.
Apologies. So that all the contributing factors, South Africa is in a crisis. Now, the 2017 government already predicted then in 2017 that 40,000 artisans is needed in South Africa at any time. Now, so we need to produce by 2030, they predict, at least 30,000 artisans per year. And we are not close to that. So latest statistics that I recently saw was there was a target in the current financial year of about 20,000 registrations that should have taken place, registrations for artisans to be trained. And about 7,300 actually were registered. There was supposed to be 19,000 completed in the past financial year. Only 10,200 were actually completed. So we see a similarity in previous years as well. Now, sure, it can be said that COVID had a big influence last year, but we don't manage to train even 20,000 artisans a year. But now there's something very important. And we are talking here about quantity of artisans and not quality of artisans. So that's a point I would like to come back to a little bit later. But now we see also that the average artisan in South Africa is around 55 years. Yeah? So which means in 10 years' time, we will have even a bigger problem in this country that we currently have. So we see that the older generation and with people with proper skills and experience, they don't transfer that to the youth in artisan training. But interesting also, it's a worldwide shift currently, that there's a huge focus being placed on artisan training. We see that even in the USA, there's a big focus on young people in artisan type of training. And because it's becoming a problem worldwide. You mentioned that young people all strive to go to university, which is not a problem. However, there are plenty of opportunities for young people in artisan types of jobs. And that's the message that we need to give. Everyone cannot be lawyers and accountants and so on. It is extremely important for us to lift the status of artisans in South Africa. And we try to do this with a campus. I'll tell you a little bit later about what we've done in the campus as well. But I think the message is there. It is the time has long gone when if you are not successful at school, that you go to a technical school and then you become an artisan. That is not how it works in South Africa.
No, absolutely. And thank you for those insights, Paul. I was also just showing some of the pictures there, like I said, that was taken by Rein Dekema of AfriForum when we visited there at your institution. And what I just found so impressive was just how busy it was when we were there. I mean, everyone was running around, everyone was working, everyone was welding, doing all types of busy stuff. There's not a lot of sitting around or lying around on your back at Soltech, it seems. The lot of sweat on a lot of brows, but it's nice to see it. It's nice to see people focused, people really doing what they love, something that they can get lost in, something that they can have a passion for. And as you described there, there's a need for it. It's not like they're doing something that's going to have them end up on the street afterwards. They're going to end up in an environment where there's a very big demand for their types of skills. And I think that's one of the big things that has come out from Soltech is the fact that you have, and we will get into this later in the show, have had some very big success stories as well. So you are giving hope and you're giving people a way to really build a future rather than getting into a position where they are reaching a point in their life where they're becoming desperate to find a job and they don't have the skills to be able to do it. So I think giving people that, especially young people, that avenue to be able to learn skills that will be in demand for the next 100 years at least, I think is a very important thing, and something that, as you mentioned as well there, goes a bit under the radar sometimes when you talk to people about these artisan skills. So something that I picked up on in regards to the chatter that there was around Soltech was some of what some of the commentators and analysts were saying. And there wasn't a lot of criticism, I have to admit. There was a lot of praise. A lot of people saw how big this accomplishment was. But there were some comments from people that they had this idea that the Soltech is nice, but we need a Soltech that's not based on language, that won't exclude people based on language. We need, I think, to use their own words, we need a Soltech for the whole South Africa. Now, how would your philosophy, the philosophy of Soltech, respond to that idea?
Yeah, I think it's important that we talk about Afrikaans and also maybe about the private side of things. About Afrikaans then first. We have covered a little bit that Afrikaans has been phased out in public institutions in South Africa. That's unfortunately a fact. And I think it's important to note that according to Section 6 of the South African Constitution, Afrikaans is one of the 11 official languages. If I'm not mistaken, the third most spoken language in South Africa, which means that Afrikaans is not a second-class language. Afrikaans is an academic developed language. It has exactly the same rights as any other language in South Africa. So this means that we not only have the right, but we also have the responsibility to ensure that the rightful place for Afrikaans exists in South Africa. And as far as other languages, Afrikaans need to be allowed and have its place in South Africa. But that's exactly the same for other languages, and it also needs to be developed if they wish to develop it. Having said this, There's been 7 court cases recently and other actions where Afrikaans have been removed from public institutions or they've been phased out. And if there's still a few Afrikaans universities that actually use Afrikaans, that's also been faded out quite quickly. So therefore, we need to protect Afrikaans from a private initiative perspective because the state and the government is not going to do that for us. And it's been driven out of the public sphere. Now, in a recent court matter, which is interesting, Chief Justice Mogoeng, he actually emphasized the importance of mother tongue education. And he said it in one of the court cases. So thereby he emphasized the importance and right of an institution like Soltech to be in Afrikaans. So, we spoke about the mother tongue language and that's the Afrikaans. I also mentioned to you that we're not excluding anyone. I'll tell you a little bit later what is the criteria that we use to allow people from South Africa to Soltech. But let's talk about the private education side for a moment. Also in our constitution, in section 29, gives us the right to be educated in a language of our choice. Now, although it needs to be one of the South African official languages, which Afrikaans is obviously one of them, there's other criteria. The section tells us that everyone has the right to also, on their own cost, establish an independent education facility or an institution. You are, however, not allowed to discriminate against race. You have to be registered with the relevant state body or the regulatory bodies. And your standards need to be at least as equal to that of the state's institutions. Now, none of those criteria is a problem for Soltech. So hence, that's why we are legally and lawfully in existence with Soltech. And I mentioned the statistics that I'll share with you. However, I want to share one with you, and that is, if you talk about the quality of training, then that needs to be at least the same as the state-owned colleges. Our pass rate for the final national exam or test that our artisans or our apprentices do is 96% for the very first time. 96% of our students pass it for the very first attempt, and 100% the second attempt. So there's no question about the quality of Soltech compared to, for example, state colleges and so on. So also, what I don't want to do, Ernst, is repeat what was already said in your previous interview with Dr. Dirk Herman. But I think it's still important to note that Soltech was established with private funds, not state subsidy. 100% private funds from normal South Africans, initially from Solidarity members that contribute 10 Rand a month. In a later stage, anyone that wants to contributed. So it's private funds that established Soltech. Now, with those funds, we bought about 50 million Rand worth of equipment for Soltech. And that also enabled us to build this new campus of ours. So you'll find training equipment at Soltech, which is absolutely state-of-the-art, high technology equipment that you will never find at other training colleges. And our strategy is quite simple. We have to train on the highest possible standard to make our students successful and employable. Because our students...
sorry to interrupt you there, Paul. In some of these pictures, you can see the equipment, exactly what you're talking about there. So to show some of the viewers, you can continue with your answer, please. I'm just putting the pictures there for context.
Yes, thanks for that. So some of this equipment you will never find anywhere. So I want to tell you about 6 pillars that we use, and which is the reason why we're so successful, what we try to do to make ourselves competitive and even more competitive than anyone else in the country. That's basically the quality of training. I'm not going to say too much about that. I told you, we have to train way above the standards or the normal standards that's expected of us, and so that our students are employed in the industry and that they are sought after in the industry. The second is the quality of staff. your ceiling of any training institution is actually your staff, your training staff. So we need to make sure that we employ the best that we can in industry with a relevant industry experience and so forth. The equipment is also important. It's no use to train people on old equipment if they are going to meet high technical equipment in the industry. The fourth is a model. So we developed a model in the past 13 years, which is quite unique, where you finish your theoretical training. At the same time, you also finish your institutional training at the college. And only after that, once you are completely trained, you go out to a employer, which is pre-approved, and you go and complete your on-the-job, what they call training. Now, that's quite unique because what the employer gets at the end of the day is a fully trained artisan, however, not qualified yet. And then they can work on the practical part. They find a student from us that is productive from day one, and they know what they're doing. So the second last is the students itself. Now, what you find typically in South Africa, where education are subsidized from wherever, you sometimes find students that's not motivated. They're not motivated to study for what they are, and they're only there because they are subsidized. Our students are not subsidized. Our students have to pay for themselves, and artisan training is expensive. So what you'll find here at Soltech is you find students that actually put a lot of pressure on us to produce and to train them on high standards so that they can go out and start earning a living out there. And then lastly, the student placement facility that we have, we call it Ayani, it's our own student placement, which is also quite unique in South Africa. So once the student are finished with a Soltech training, he or she needs to go out to an employer to be trained. Now, we have a database at Ayani of about 800 employers and 400 active employers that stand in queues to employ our students. What we find in the past year or so is that even 3 months before students are finished at Soltech or finish at Soltech, they are already employed in the industry, and the industry want them. So that's the 6 pillars why we're successful and what we try to just be the best in South Africa.
No, that's very fascinating, Paul. And before we continue, I'd just like to read some comments here and maybe get your thoughts on some of them. So the first comment comes from Takuwani Ramagwede, who says, in my workplace, I've seen about 4 or maybe 5 guys from Soltech doing apprenticeships. This school is fruitful. And then you also have a comment here from Sideliner Opinions, who says, most people think that a degree is a money tree. Huge mistake. Many degrees are useless. There will always be need for artisans. And then the last comment that I want to read so far is from Paula Kernan, who says artisans are also future employers. Now, maybe before we ask any other questions, do you have any thoughts that you want to share specifically on that sentiment?
Yeah, thank you for the nice compliment about seeing some Soltech students. That's what we like to hear. The last comment about Paula, we've got very good success stories from Soltech. I remember one specific student finished electrician. He was qualified as an electrician. He went out and started a very successful business. At the end of the day, he started employ plumbers, more electricians, more teams, and so on. He currently has got 55 employees working for him. Now, a lot of those employees are Soltech students, obviously. I'm going to tell you some other stories as well, Aaron. It happened some time ago where an employer came to us and said, you know what, we want one of your black students. Can you please supply me one of your black students? We would like to interview him. And the guy went for the interview, and they were so impressed with him. The employer asked him, okay, so we need 5 more. We need 5 more of your friends. Can you please gather your friends and also bring them? For interviews, we need to appoint 5. He went back to Soltech and he got 5 of his friends. And when they pitched up at the employer, he said, wait, I said you must bring 5 black students. He said, no, but you said bring 5 of my friends. That's my friends. That's who I'm studying with. I'm comfortable. At the end of the day, they employed the 5 students. So we have many success stories. Our students are quite successful, and we're very grateful for that. And we like to take all the credit for that, but we can't take the credit. We've got hardworking students and students that wants to make a success in South Africa.
And that's a excellent story. But talking about, on that positive note as well, as I mentioned earlier, there was quite the buzz on social media regarding Soltech when it was in the news. I trust you were also following along, maybe just with one eye on what was being said on social media. What was your experience there in terms of seeing what South Africans were saying on Facebook and Twitter and all these types of sites? When that news was really hot, when all the media was talking about Soltech, and a lot of people had opinions to put out there.
Yeah. No, look, the past few weeks is excellent for us. The reactions on social media and other media has been just extremely positive since we've opened, especially since we opened on the 1st of February this year. And it's very nice to see some of the older students coming back, congratulating, saying that they are actually quite jealous about the new campus. But it's also interesting to see how the industry come on board and want to be involved. I just wish we could allow more people on the campus to come and see the campus. Unfortunately, we are so restricted at the moment with COVID that we need to be very careful at this stage. But I can tell you that we had an open day last Friday and Saturday. Now, obviously, due to the COVID, we can only allow 100 people outside per hour and so on. But we still had more than 5,000 people attending to our online video about the open day, which is a record for us. And we posted a photo about 3 weeks ago. We flew over the campus with a helicopter and was able to take some photos from the air. And we posted that photo just on our website. And within a day, I think 2 days, it had 75,000 views on that photo with a lot of positive criticism. People see the campus as a beacon of hope. And what they see is they see a future for young people in South Africa. And if that's the message that we can send with building a campus, that's a message that we are very comfortable with.
And seeing as you mentioned the campus itself, and you spend every working day there, are there any specific interesting facts that you can share about the campus itself that you took this beautiful helicopter photo of?
Yeah, I would like to tell you a little bit more about the architectural maybe. This campus is built on a typical South African architectural style. It's called the third vernacular, or also Pretoria regionalism. Now, if you take the architectural styles in South Africa, you start with the Cape Holland's style, then there's I can't remember the second one now, but anyway, the third one is most a South African style. The previous styles was styles that we brought over from overseas. So after the Second World War, some architects in Pretoria came together and they said, we need to develop a South African style of architecture. And that's what they did. And what they also did is they took some of the weather of South Africa, which is very harsh, cold and warm. They took that into consideration. And what we've done, our architect took that inspiration and put a little bit of a modern spin onto it. And so we have a lot of things from South Africa incorporated in the design. Now, one thing that's very interesting is some plates. It's about 2 meters high and 1.17 meters of these plates. That's a real artwork, piece of art. I'll put here to show the contribution that artisans made in South Africa. And it goes in a timeline showing, for example, the first light in Kimberley, the railway tracks, the mining industry in South Africa, Eskom, Sasol, Krugerrand, the Afrikaans taal monument, the language monument, the Voortrekker monument is in there. There's all Garib Dam, the dam is in there. It's all happenings or moments in South Africa where artisans played a very big role in establishing that for South Africa. That's also part of what we do to uplift students. Let me just stand still. I'll tell you now about the cafeteria, for example, that we have here. Now, our campus.
Maybe you can incorporate in your answer maybe the campus culture or the campus traditions that go with the architecture that you just described.
Sure. So the campus buildings is about 11,000 square meters, about 2,700 admin, classrooms 1,500 square meters, workshops an impressive 5,500 square meters. And in that is a 400-seat cafeteria. So what we've done in the cafeteria is, again, we want to uplift artisan students, apprentices. We don't want to tell them, listen, we're going to give you a proper place to eat. We're going to give you proper food. In there is a 400-seat. We can give food to students in a 2 hours time for about 900 students. But it's designed in a way with a specific theme that people actually need to come and experience. And with leather couches, for example, to go and relax. So how do you bring leather couches with people which is thought of mechanics and so on? I think it's very important. I think it's important to show the students that we care for them, that they are in a proper place in the campus where that's going to take them places in future. So I mentioned to you we started in October 2019, finished December 2020, and we stayed within budget and we stayed within the timelines. Now, the only way you can do that is if you have a proper professional team that actually do that for you. So we've got quite a clever campus with high-tech building management systems, water usage, electrical systems, and so on. And just an interesting fact is we've got about 150 kilometers of electrical cabling in the campus, 8.5 kilometers of plumbing pipes, 513 tons of steel, and 1.5 million bricks. So it's just a few interesting facts. But we also had our share of challenges. There's something called in South Africa they call the building mafia, and it's people that come and intimidate you. And so we had our share of that. We also over COVID had our problems with material, and still remember the last 2,000 square meters of roof we could only find in Namibia. So it was brought in from Namibia. Otherwise, we would not be able to finish in time. So as you talk about the traditions and the campus life, now this whole campus was developed with the student in the middle. So the student is center in the campus. And I mentioned it's to show students that we value them, etc., etc. In the courtyard, there's a 3.6 meter TV screen with proper sound for occasions like festivities and rugby matches. The student life is very important to us. And then, we've got nice traditions where a student starts with, when he starts, you see a wall at a certain place in the campus where all the names of previous qualified students are, and that student strive for that day when he qualifies to come and put his plate there on the wall. So it's a nice tradition. Of course, we need our students to become alumni after they finish, and they become representatives of Soltech at the end of the day. So once you qualified, you also become a member of the Solidarity Guilds, where you can network with fellow students, fellow guild members, look for opportunities, and so on. So, student life is very important to us. I think everyone also wants to have a proper student life. Now, if you do that and you can provide that to students, I just think it's an excellent way. You know what? Last point there. When you're a student, it's actually a very important time for your life. You decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life. You qualify yourself to do what you're going to do for the rest of your life and provide for your family. But a lot of times you also meet your partner, which you will spend the rest of your life. Why not make it also the most memorable time of your life when you are a student? And that is why we see this.
Mm. No, that's absolutely right. I mean, that's the type of experience I had at university as well. And I would like everyone that goes to tertiary education to have that same experience and to take part in the culture and have those traditions available to them. But on that note, and this is something that we alluded to earlier in the conversation, who can enroll at Soltech? What are the requirements? I mean, because this is one of the things, I think some of the few criticisms that I could find of Soltech were people that basically claimed that people were going to be excluded unfairly based on, for example, what community they come from or what race they are. So maybe we can clear that up in regards to what do you need to enroll at Soltech? What are the requirements for any young person to enroll?
Yeah, and so in short, Soltech is a South African college for African-speaking students. All South Africans. But there's three criteria that you need to meet before you can be admitted. So the first one is you need to pass an admission test. Now that test is not to catch you out. That test is simply to say who's got the potential to complete the studies. Otherwise, you're wasting someone's money or you're taking someone's place. That's the first criteria. The second criteria is you need to have a good understanding of Afrikaans. However, we do have English-speaking students, but they are comfortable with Afrikaans. They can understand Afrikaans. However, if they ask a question in English, they are going to be answered in English. If they're asked to write a test in English, they can write the test in English. You know, the one thing that we also can't do is we can't teach students only Afrikaans terminology, which they are not familiar with when they go out to industry. So we have to teach them the English terminology as well. We even go as far to say that from April this year, there's an Afrikaans course that you can attend if you want to learn to speak Afrikaans better. So that's the second one. The third one is you need to be able to pay your initiation. It is quite expensive. There's no state subsidy. And if you cannot pay, we will even help you. There's interest-free loans for people that can't afford it. There's interest-bearing loans. So in the past 13 years of existence, we have never not allowed a student, if there's space and if they can meet those three criteria. So that's quite easy and nothing funny about that.
And for students at Soltech that want to improve their Afrikaans, will there be services or opportunities for that?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, it is from April this year. There is a course that we're busy developing to actually improve your Afrikaans. So if you are not comfortable with Afrikaans and you can't follow Afrikaans teaching, we are more than happy to teach that to you. And you have to just do the course, and once completed, you can do the test again. And if you pass and you're comfortable, you're welcome to enroll.
And you touched on this earlier, but maybe if you have any other thoughts that you want to add, do students find success regularly after Soltech? Seeing as you guys have been in business for quite a few years, what are the stories that you're hearing?
Yeah, so we decided, we also always had a good feeling that our students are successful. So we decided let's just do proper research and see what happens to our students once they finish. So the first thing is, I mentioned we have 100% pass success rate to place our students at the practical workplace. So that's quite a good statistic. But once the student qualifies, we find that 94.7% find permanent employment within 6 months. Actually, 56.7% are employed immediately. The day they qualified, they are immediately employed. Quite interesting, 20.2% of our students are entrepreneurs. So they work for themselves and they employ other students then again. So they stimulate the economy quite good. Then 37.2% is working for a company with more than 250 employees. So that's your bigger corporates and companies. Now, the last statistics is, when a student finishes and he starts earning money, when he qualifies, he or she starts with a salary between 22 and 32,000 rand, more or less on average. So it's a pretty decent salary for a young 21-year-old person to start. So they're quite big. They're very successful.
No, that's what you want to hear. I mean, it's one thing just to be all talk, but when you can show those success stories and tell those success stories and show the statistics to back them up, then it's a whole different story. Then people will start to really taking you seriously, and you get that element of legitimacy that you don't play around at Soltech. And something else that I saw was on social media. When this story first broke in the news this year, was that everyone was asking, when is the Soltech coming to the Western Cape? When is KwaZulu-Natal getting a Soltech? When is the Free State getting a Soltech? How would you respond to those demands?
You know, in an ideal world with unlimited funds, I think that might have been possible. For now, we've made a decision to build a world-class campus with all our capacity here in Pretoria. The hostels are on their way, so it's a 300 million rand campus with hostel facilities included, and we're starting to build the hostels pretty soon now. And with that way, where we say, let's put all our capacity in this one world-class campus with accommodation, ends up that students from all over the country come and do Soltech. They completed training in Pretoria, but they are placed back at their hometowns where possible for their practical experience, and we want them to go back there and partake in the economy there. So the unfortunate news at this stage is we just simply don't have the capacity at this stage. And what we also saw is if we have to duplicate it in another province or somewhere else, you literally have to take another 300 million rand, put it there, and we have to literally duplicate everything that we have here in Pretoria. We have to do there. So unfortunately, the answer for now is no, but you never know what future might hold.
We'll get to what the future holds in just a moment. I think there's just one more thing that I want to get to that I found very interesting when we spoke in person, and that was when you mentioned all the inspiration that you took from abroad. So it sounds like you didn't just start with Soltech, you did your research first, and it wasn't just research on the African continent, it was research all over the world. So if you could please enlighten us on that, where did your inspiration come from? Where did you learn some of your big lessons?
Yeah, I think, I must be honest, I think the biggest lessons that we learned was in South Africa, where we made mistakes and you have to work around certain things and so on and improve. However, in the past 13 years, I was fortunate to be able to go to places like countries like Germany, USA 2 times, to go and see how we compare with German artisans, for example. Now, you know, the biggest lessons that I learned there is there's no big difference between the quality of training that Soltech gives and for example, Germany or the USA give. But the big difference is what happens before they get to Soltech. You know, the school system in Germany, for example, allows a person to, at grade 10 or 16 years of age, to already start focusing on the direction he or she wants to go. So they start with artisan training already when they're 16 years old. And obviously, I don't have to talk about the quality of school systems that are there compared to us. So that's a big difference. The other thing is that we don't have the kind of money that other countries have. So the luxury of space is something that we cannot afford at the new campus. So we had to make sure that each and every space that's built at Soltech is fully utilized. It must be fully utilized. So what we did here of building a big area that can act as a cafeteria, but for example, between 12 and 2, and the rest of the time by using technology, it can also act as a training center. And we were never 100% sure if this is going to work until we got to a place in Austin, Texas, in the USA, where we saw a similar facility with 600 students at once sitting in front of their computers and studying all different courses, all at once, attending class. Now, we've incorporated that, and we started now with a new model, which is called the flipped classroom model. It's something that we develop. It's out there. It's a flipped classroom model and a self-directed learning model, which means that the student will now go to our cafeteria. He sits in front. He and she and their friends sit in front of a television screen, which we've got 15 of, and we've got about 100 not iPads, tablets, and they can then go through videos. We've got about 800 videos busy developing where they can attend classes before they actually get to the class. So they prepare themselves before they get to the class. So that's some of the bigger inspirations that we find abroad. But I think at the end of the day, we were satisfied to say that we're not very behind with the quality of training. I think there's a few other things that South Africa is unfortunately behind, schooling, for example, funding, and so on. But I think it was quite inspirational to see that.
And hopefully now with the success of Soltech, you will be a lesson and an inspiration to others. I don't know if you've been visited by people from abroad, but I'm sure there are a lot of people studying what you're doing, taking notes, and I think it's going to be, like I said, a pioneering endeavor. I think a lot of people will be learning from what's happening at Soltech and trying to apply that in their own countries. I think that's a great thing. I think the solutions that are being pioneered in South Africa today will be the solutions that will probably be used in other countries in the future as they maybe experience some of the same problems that we do. So the last question that I wanted to ask you is something that you mentioned briefly, and that is the future. What does the future hold for Soltech? What is on the horizon in regards to the people behind Soltech, seeing as Soltech already was a big dream. It's not thinking small, it's thinking big. So my gut feeling is that you're not thinking small in regards to the next step either. So if you could give us some information there, it would be great.
Yeah, look, it was a big step for us to be in this kind of campus now, so we can't stop here. But our very first short-term goals was to establish Soltech even further here where we are. Our vision is to be the preferred artisan training college in South Africa, and we're well on our way to do that. So we need to establish what we do, and we still need to just improve whatever we do with employers. But then we are busy developing new non-technical qualifications. For example, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, coding and other short courses, robotica, computer skills, etc. Another thing that we are busy with is for our own students. We're busy developing our own students as well as outside students, proper courses in entrepreneurship, marketing, financial management, administration, etc., to help them to become proper artisans, entrepreneurs, and to create jobs as well. Now, we're even looking at the possibility of things like social work, assistance, home nursing, all those kind of things. But here's the big thing, whatever we do, we need to be able to do it much better than anyone else in South Africa to make our students successful. And then there needs to be a need in the industry for those students, and that's not that easy in South Africa at the moment. So we're busy developing a lot of things. Our very big next building is obviously the hostels that are being built in the next year. And let's see where we go from here.
The future seems bright, especially if you apply the same philosophy and the same values that made Soltech possible. I mean, whatever you can achieve after this, this is only the beginning, it seems. I get that feeling that this Soltech is just the tip of the iceberg, and you being in the thick of it, walking the hallways of Soltech every day, I'm guessing you get that same feeling as well about the future.
Yeah, no, we are very excited. And as we're also excited for our, let's call it, sister companies. Someone like academia. That's if you talk about a real big next for the solidarity movement. Soltech will cost 300 million rand. Our academia campus, residential campus, will be 1.8 billion rand. So that's a real big thing. But we are thankful. I think we're thankful for our community, for the people that contributed, for our students. And we are happy to be here to assist them for a better future in South Africa.
And just the last comment I'm going to read before we say goodnight. Karel van Rooyen says, such a breath of fresh air. I'm an artisan. I've got so many ideas to be totally independent. That's very excellent to hear, Karel.
Thank you, Karel.
And so, Paul, seeing as we've reached the end of the conversation, I'm going to give you one last question, and that is, what are your final thoughts, or what are the final thoughts from Soltech for the people listening and anyone that's interested in what the big ideas that you guys are busy with there?
You know, we would like to welcome as much as possible people, community members, and so on the Soltech campus. Just give us a chance so that COVID allows us to do that. We are not only an educational facility, we're also a community. Community is important for us. So we would like to involve industry. We would like to involve the public and the community, and pretty soon we will do that.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for your valuable time. This was a very interesting conversation. The hour flew by. It's already done. And the comments we've gotten so far are very positive. People seem very excited with what you're doing there. And as I said, I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say I call it pioneering in regards to what you're doing there. You're building the future. And as the solidarity slogan goes, ons bou om te bly, we're building to stay. And the Soltech is definitely one of those institutions. So thank you very much for your time. I've put a link in the description to Soltech's website if anyone wants to go read further. And lastly, thank you very much for everyone that tuned in. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for all your kind comments and taking part in the conversation, and really also taking time out of your day to learn a bit more about what's going on in the world around you, specifically in South Africa in regards to the future and what's being built. So thank you very much for tuning in. You can also help the show by leaving a like. If you are new on the channel and you like these types of conversations, you can subscribe. And also, if you're listening and it's not live, you're listening afterwards, you can leave a comment as well with your thoughts. I will definitely read them. And then lastly, I would also appreciate it if you share this video out with anyone that you think will find it interesting, especially in South Africa, people that will learn something from it, people that have been asking questions about Soltech. If you see someone on social media asking questions about Soltech, you can just link them to this discussion. I think they'll learn a lot. So good night, everyone. I hope you have a very nice evening and a nice week ahead. Good night and God bless.
Thank you, Ernest. Bye.